What's going on, everybody? This Afro think tank. Now listen up, white folk. All right, you know I crack on you guys all the time. All right, all the time, and you guys watch me crack on you guys all the time. All right, and I know you guys going through a rough time right now. You know, being held accountable and all. Right, everybody's calling you out for your shit, you know, and your culture and all that stuff. I understand that, right? But I just want to, you know, because I hear a lot of white folks who are struggling with having reasons to be proud of themselves, right, as they look in their history. And I always say, you know, me being a pro-black, pan-African, black first guy, right, I can look at things objectively, and I can say that you white folks do, in fact, have a history that you can be proud of. And you have things you can be proud of right now, despite all that's going on. All right? What you got to do is you got to de-educate yourselves from the things that your parents taught you, right? Because the thing is, your parents taught you what the church taught them, and what their parents taught them, and what the church taught their parents, right? And your teachings was based off an algorithm, a human social algorithm, to make you act and believe and do certain things to benefit the rich white folk, right? So you have been manipulated. You've been manipulated since you guys stopped being serfs in Europe and came over here and y'all thought y'all was owning something, right? Thought y'all wasn't slaves, right? That's y'all mistake. Y'all got ahead of yourself because you tasted freedom for the first time and you ain't know what the fuck to do with yourself, right? I understand, right? But there are things in your history that you can be proud of, you know, as Europeans. First of all, I think one thing I think you guys don't do is you don't study your pre-Christian European history. You don't study your version of spirituality, right? That's one thing. You guys are stuck on that Christian thing, and keep in mind, you guys were converted too, the same way we were converted by you, just so you know, right? But before that, y'all had somewhat close to a spiritual system, something similar to what us African people had, yeah? More of a communal way of living, right? Before Christianity and Western civilization came and assimilated you guys like the Borg, right? And you guys should tap into that, right? Tap into those communities. Find out, do your DNA, because I know y'all don't know where the hell y'all from either. Stop lying. Y'all not all Irish. Do your DNA, find out where you're from, and look at the history post-Christianity, and y'all should go ahead and start digging into that European history and find your actual culture, right? Do that, because white's not a thing, all right? That's why I haven't called you white yet, even though I love calling you guys white. Algorithm doesn't even care that I call you white. White. I can say white all day, and guess what? It's not a community guideline strike or violation, because white's not a real thing. It's a construct, huh? You ain't figured that out yet? That's why I can say white and not get hit with anything, right? But there are times in American history which you can be proud of, right? Have you ever noticed that they never teach you about the pirate age? I want y'all to think about this. The only time you ever hear about the pirate age is on movies like, Captain Hook or Peter Pan or Pirates of the Caribbean. But have you ever took a look at that time period to see what life was like, what economies were like before we had these countries in the Caribbean, and why the Caribbeans are the Caribbeans, and that whole thing with the port? Have you ever take a look at that time period, and I guarantee you will find reasons to be proud. Because who we call pirates was actually people fighting and raging against a machine. Okay, both black and white. There are many people that you can be proud of during the pirate era. History's heroes like John Brown. John Brown is an American that you can be proud of. He also raged against the machine, and he also made you proud. If you want to be proud American, European American, be proud of people like John Brown. And John Brown wasn't the only one. I guarantee you they didn't teach you about John Brown in your schools, did they? Huh? You don't even know who that is, do you? Look him up. All right, look up John Brown. Look at the people, the white males. Look up the white males who actually was disgusted with the Western way of thinking, the Western slavery. Look at the white males who fought and died on behalf of black and brown people. Look at the white males that fought on behalf of the Native Americans. Sure, they lost. Of course they lost, right? Right? They won some battles, but they fought. You can be proud of those. I'm sure your schools, your institutions didn't teach you about those guys, right? They only taught you about the curated white people that needed you to reinforce their racism, and why you should just believe everything that they say because they're rich and white. You're poor. and whites, but they're going to help you one day, right? How's that working out for you, right? And so because of that, I can recognize that you guys have things y'all can be proud of. Now you have things that you can be proud of today, okay? Now, you guys are being held responsible for all the shit that the majority of your community does, still to this day, right? We got lynchings happening left and right. And the institutions that the people like you and from your community are still doing nothing about it, because you guys are holding on to every apparatus of white supremacy you possibly can, and those who fight against it are looked at as pariahs of their communities, right? And so that's why I'm saying I want to commend those white men, specifically I'm talking about white men, because you white men are the problem, but you guys are also the solution. And as a black man, I'm telling you, you know, as a man to man, that you are the problem, but you are also the solution, right? Because only a white man can fix another white man, because we've been trying and shit don't work, right? But this is an unprecedented amount of white men putting themselves out there on the public for public scrutiny and to be scrutinized by their communities, because they're now speaking up against racism, despite what their community says about them. Because I know that these white men who put their faces on camera and speak up against white supremacy, when they turn that camera off, they have to deal with their community. They have to deal with the racism in their house. They have to deal with the racism when they go to the grocery store. They have to deal with the fact that their neighbors see them fighting for another group of people, and as far as they're concerned, fighting against them and their culture and everything that makes them great. Imagine having to deal with that in the community. You see, for a black person, our Kunarians, our black people who fight for white supremacy, they don't live amongst us. They don't live in our communities. They stay far away from the greater black community, so they're safe. And they have absolutely no attention on coming around us, because they already know that there are social consequences for their actions, just like there are social consequences for your actions speaking up against any injustice that benefits white supremacy. And you guys should be proud of yourself that despite the fact that there are black people who do not accept your all of a sudden wokeness, they don't accept your praise, they don't accept your goddamn condemnation, because your people have done enough and they heard it all before. And the words does not seem to be turning into actions as far as they're concerned. You guys are not moving fast enough as far as they're concerned. With you guys knowing that, you're still doing the work. With not receiving as much gratitude as maybe some of you wish you would, which some of you hopefully wish should know that you shouldn't receive any gratitude, because the doing the work is doing the basics, right? So a lot of you understand that you shouldn't be praised for something that you should be doing as a human being. This is baseline. And that it shouldn't be seen as amazing, but it is amazing that you guys are doing the baseline. Just speaking up by itself is something all human beings should be doing, and especially white males speaking up against, fighting against those other white males who deem to ruin any semblance of reputation that you have left. And you guys right now are creating a new narrative. You guys are giving your offspring somebody else to look forward to, another alternative to the cultural norms that you guys are used to. And there are people in your community who are afraid to speak out because they don't want to be outliers. But as long as you guys keep putting your faces on the cameras and keep speaking truth to power, right, and doing the work, and I know it's got to be hard, because even some of you doing the work, you still fumble and slip. You still have to deal with the internalized and trained racism within you. Yet you're still staying humble enough to continue to try to do the work. We understand that some of you guys slip, right? But as long as you're going in the right direction and you're giving your children something to look forward to and someone to look up to, a white male to look up to. Because all of these gentlemen are white men that a white young teenage boy or a child can look up to. A real individual, not a grifter, not a TV star, real men, real white men being positive influences for other young white boys. Because I don't want your little young white boys to be trained to kill my little young black boys. You understand what I'm saying? So I have to defend my children, and I have to secure their future. And in order for me to secure their future, I have to make sure that I have to try to make sure they don't have as much opposition as me. I have to make sure that the next batch of demons are smaller than the last one. And it's up to you white males to make sure that your culture doesn't create more demons, that they create more humans. Because you got to keep in mind, right? As far distance as we are biologically from each other, right? You guys come from us. You go back far enough, everything goes goes back to black. All right, somewhere deep down inside of you, there's an African woman and an African man. You guys know that. And that's how it should have been from the beginning. We all should have been celebrating human accomplishments in human history and not being broken up in race and ethnicity. We all could have enjoyed the accomplishments of humanity together as human beings, but some members of your community decided to, chop it up for, ethno-nationalistic purposes or whatnot, right? And now look where you find yourself, right? Because you don't want to share. But for you guys who are sharing, right, your safety with us, because I know it can be quite dangerous to be a white person going against white people in America every day, right? So let me just give you your props, right? So I'm giving you, I have something to be proud when it comes to the past. You just have to go research that because they didn't teach you. And you have something to be proud for in the present, the things that you guys are doing right now, right? And hopefully if you create a new culture and create cultural consistency in the future, right? The people and the young white boys and girls you're inspiring right now will make you proud in the future and won't let you down. Anyway, you guys tell me what you think in the comment section. It's Afro Think Tank. Learn something, teach something. I'm out.
Yesterday morning, I attended a predominantly white, urban, mainline congregation that likes to think of itself as being very progressive or liberal. I wanted to see if anything was said about the gutting of the Voting Rights Act and the carving up of Memphis, Tennessee into 3 ridiculously racially gerrymandered districts. And it was not a damn word said. I checked with some other friends to see if any white pastors anywhere had connected the liberating gospel of Jesus, connected that to the racist gerrymandering that we're seeing in the Bible Belt, the former slave states. And apparently not a single white pastor is willing to say what needs to be said, which just reinforces something that I guess we should have always known, that no matter how liberal or progressive or open-minded a white Christian might like to think that they are, we are so unwilling to confess our racism, both as individuals and as congregations, as an entire culture. We will not confess and repent of the racism that we have actively cultivated and nurtured in ourselves and our institutions, or passively enabled. And that's got to change. Going forward, here's the assignment for white Christians: confess, repent, apologize, and repeat. That's the only way we're going to get out of the mess we have created for the country, is to finally reckon with our own racism, the racism that runs through our hearts and our steeples and our colleges. It's everywhere. The residue of it has gone nowhere. It infects all of white Christian culture, and it's time to take it seriously. We need preachers who will preach on this, not shy away from it with these ridiculous religious platitudes. Confess, repent, apologize, repeat.
The reason the majority of racists in this country are white males from low income brackets with low educations, simply put, is that they're pissed off because they couldn't win a race that was literally rigged in their fucking favor, all because they were born straight white males. And if they don't have somebody to blame, eventually they'd have to admit the son of a bitch responsible for most of their fucking problems stares back at them in the mirror every morning. But they'll spend more time obsessing over immigrants, blacks, gays, and DEI than they ever have trying to improve their own fucking lives. I mean, an immigrant didn't blow your paycheck at the bar. A gay couple didn't get your truck repoed. A trans kid didn't make you drop out of high school. A black family didn't keep you from learning a trade, showing up to work, and acting like a decent human being. You did that shit by yourself. So when you're standing there screaming that everybody else is getting special treatment, maybe ask yourself why you're getting fucking lapped by people who had to climb over fences that you never even saw. I mean, you see, racism isn't strength. It's what insecure people wrap themselves in when they don't have accomplishments to brag about. And homophobia isn't toughness. It's fear wearing fucking work boots. And all that DEI whining, it's just another way of saying I'm scared to compete when everybody else finally gets a fair shot. I mean, the fucking hard truth is, if your identity depends upon somebody else staying beneath you, you never stood very fucking tall to begin with. Quit blaming minorities for your misery. Quit blaming LGBTQ plus folks because your life's a fucking train wreck. Quit looking for scapegoats every goddamn election cycle. Just grab a fucking mirror, because that reflection has cost you more opportunities than every immigrant, every pride parade, every DEI program, and every person of color combined.
As a white male, let me just speak to any other white males that are listening, or white people that are listening in general. We're not fooling anyone, and we're not fooling ourselves. And I know, because I was raised and conditioned to see the world a particular way, I know what my ears are hearing. And you can place all the context you want around it. Someone said to me recently, Pastor, he did not say, quote, black women. You're right. He called specifically 4 black women, one of which was Michelle Obama. And these educated black women is who he was talking about. And in the context, it doesn't change. And until we can come to a place where we acknowledge that rebranded, sanitized, polite racism is still racism. And the great Franciscan priest Richard Rohr says it like this. He says, you cannot heal what you do not acknowledge. And this is why it's so imperative when I see things like this administration and Trump and MAGA pushing to remove images of slavery from museums. We're regressing. We're moving backwards. And he knows what he's doing. This administration knows what they're doing. And I'm learning more and more that what this is underneath, what it is white supremacy. And a part of the reason, perhaps, many of these leaders, these white male leaders, part of the reason many of them are kicking and screaming and putting out the dog whistles, and I'm getting them, God knows the people of color are getting them. Part of the reason I believe that's happening is because they are so terrified of one word: equality. Equality feels like oppression to them.
I'm gonna let you guys in on a little secret about white people. Every single white person knows somebody who is racist. Racist towards black people, racist towards Spanish people. We all know somebody. It might be our family member, it might be a distant relative, it might be a coworker, it might be an old friend, but we all know somebody. Personally, I come from a whole family of racist people. Yeah, my entire family is Republican too, okay? My dad's parents are racist, and my mom's parents are racist. Okay? So I'm literally going against everything by talking about this. I am putting my own life on the line by speaking about this, and that's what we all should be doing. See, we could have ended this a long time ago, but people like my mom listened to these racist comments that their parents were making and didn't speak out against it. They kept their mouths shut, or they agreed with them silently, you know? But they didn't do anything about it. They continued to let this be passed on generation after generation. Oh, my mom never told me or taught me any racist ideologies. She continued to let it happen because she didn't speak out against it when her parents were talking about it, or my dad's parents were talking. So if you are against racism and you are against discrimination and you're a white person, you need to speak out about it. Otherwise, you are allowing this to continue generation after generation, and you are just as much a part of the problem as anybody else.
I had a stepfather at the time who thought it was acceptable to, and actually encouraged me to be racist. He told me that these people were not as good as me. And as time's gone on, I've realised that they're the same as me.
Can I ask how you learnt that?
My daughter got into a relationship with a Polish guy who is lovely. And I have a shopkeeper around the corner who's Hindu, who is the hardest working man I've ever met. And I've just realised over time that we are just people trying to get on in the world, and whatever colour your skin is, we are just all the same people.
Tell me, because I about the day you apologised.
We did a school reunion, and he was just like, "It's fine, I'm used to it," which is sad, isn't it? So I felt like a bit of a weight had been lifted, but also I felt more of an idiot.
Why?
Because I was just ignorant, wasn't I?
Being a man, being an adult, is about facing up to the things we've done wrong and putting them right. And when I hear people like yourself doing it and having the cojones to do it on the radio, I think I can say that, and having the cojones to do it on the radio makes my heart leap, Richie. Can't put it any other way. Makes it worth getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to hear people like you.
I think his core is broke white people who are so mad that you really don't have an excuse to be just broke and white, you know? So like broke white people, they don't know who to blame. They're like, everything was set up for you to make it. To be, you ain't gotta be rich or a mogul, but you should be able to make it. And if you can't, who you gonna blame? Oh, you know, I'm blaming the Mexicans that came over here illegally. You know, I'm gonna blame them. They're the ones taking the jobs that I should get. No, they ain't. You're just lazy, you're stupid.
That are fans of Chud the fucking Builder. But I need to clear up some things. Yes, I was in the Aryan Brotherhood. I did some extensive prison time. I am no longer a part of that organization, but I stood on it, as you can see, when I was. If I'm banging, I'm claiming whatever the fuck I'm claiming. You're going to see it all over me. I mean, that's just the facts. But regardless, as a former one, I'm not going to disrespect you because you're fucking color. I'm not out here to pick fights. They don't do that. They're not fucking a racist organization. They're just proud to be white. And that's okay. It's proud to be, I want you to be proud of you. Be proud to be black. Be proud to be Mexican. Everybody needs to be proud of their own heritage. That's how the world's supposed to work.
Videos for educational purposes only, not to throw any shade at anyone. I will actively support anyone who is trying to deconstruct and learn the work of anti-racism. In fact, I reached out to the creator of that video and said I would love to connect with him. The thing he said is that white supremacist organization was not racist, and I used to believe the same exact thing. I used to believe that we were just pro our people. We weren't anti other people. But white pride and white supremacy at its very core is anti-black, anti-every other race. The 14 words are the creed, the motto of white supremacy. The 14 words are, we must secure the existence of our race and a future for white children. The author of the 14 words was David Lane. David Lane was like one of the leading voices of white supremacy. He also wrote these 88 Precepts, which was a manifesto that he wrote while in prison, which talked about racial preservation, and one of the leading voices on white nationalism. The other thing that he said is that we should be proud of who we are. We should be proud of our heritage. He said, I should be proud to be white. You should be proud to be black. Be proud to be Mexican. The problem is our identity, our heritage isn't in whiteness. White pride was birthed out of fear of the Great Replacement Theory, an existential threat to our very existence. It inevitably started marginalizing and oppressing other races. Black pride and brown pride was founded in surviving the oppression from white pride. Black pride was literally trying to stop the cultural and identity erasure of generations of people by white pride type of people. Back then, people didn't identify by whiteness. They identified by their nation of origin or their ethnicity, being British, Dutch, Irish, Italian. Some wealthy elite Europeans could count, and they realized that if they gave the poor Europeans a little bit of perceived social status by labeling them white, they would let them vote, buy land, sell land, enter into contracts, get married and get divorced, give them a gun and a badge, and let them lord over all the non-white people, and then they would do their bidding. They would sign up in their military forces and their police forces to protect the elite white people. This is why I say it's so important for us to do the work. We can't just say, okay, well, I'm not racist. I'm not a part of that anymore. We have to learn the work of anti-racism so we can help other people deconstruct.
A white man tells us the real reason why racist white men wants to take the country back to 1865.
So here's the real reason why all these racist ass white men want to take us back to before 1865, because that's where they really want to go with this. So here's the thing. Back in 1865, rich white men could just essay black women all they wanted to. And that's what this is all about. White men have never been able to handle rejection. Ever. And they want to go back to a time where they didn't have to deal with it. Where they could just, if they got turned down, they could go back out into the field, grab someone from one of the houses, and have their way with them without consequences. That's what they truly want.
Most white folks don't have the stomach to say the truth out loud about race, so I'm going to do it for you. Racism ain't a touchy subject if you're not fucking racist. If the truth makes you feel attacked, you're probably protecting a fucking lie. You wouldn't trade places with a black man for $1 million, and you know exactly why. Our fucking racism. If you're staying neutral while a man gets done wrong, you're just helping the fucking bully. Saying you don't see color just means you're too scared to see the fucking truth. If you gotta keep a man on his knees just to feel tall, you're the weakest man in the whole goddamn room. Bragging about a win in a rigged race don't make you a winner. That just makes you a fucking cheater. They taught you to hate your neighbor so you wouldn't notice they're picking your fucking pockets. That's a goddamn truth right there. Your comfort is a bill that someone else is paying with their fucking life. This ain't casual racism. It's fucking real. White supremacy is sinking the whole damn boat just to watch your neighbor go under while you drown with them, motherfucker. White supremacy is burning your own goddamn house to the fucking ground just to make sure your neighbor stays cold. As white people, we have a choice to make. We can find our soul or we can keep the lie, but we'll never have both. Ever.
It started with like we would watch a movie, and if it had like a black lead, like a black actor who was the lead, they would change it, and I'd be like, why? I was watching that. Well, we don't watch, and they say a slur, we don't watch them on the TV. And I'm like, oh, okay, you know, I guess we don't do that. Any kind of positive outlook on anything besides white culture, it was frowned upon. I was made fun of for it. I was told I was a slur lover, like that kind of thing. And we're talking, I'm not even a teenager yet.
Yeah, you're like, you said you were around 8 to 10 or something?
Here's the racism is spoon-fed to you. It's not like what you see in movies. It's not really shoved in your down your throat. It's slowly fed to you. But some bites are bigger than others. Sometimes you do get a big bite and you're like, oh, this is a lot to chew on. And you have a choice to spit it out or swallow it. And me, I was always half and half because I, wanted to trust my parents or parent at the time. So I thought, oh, they know best. They're the ones raising me, like that. I was a very logical child to a degree, but also very ignorant. But that was because I was being raised in ignorance.
My family was racist growing up. Yeah, exactly. My mum would be the person that says, look, I don't want you lot mixing with the other races when it comes to girlfriend and boyfriend. My mum was Christian. My mum was going to church at the time every week. She said the same thing. Dan, what's that about? I said, look, mum, just read. Take the Quran. She read the Quran back to front 3 times in a month. She said to me, do you know what? I'm taking my shahada.
White people invented race to justify their oppression of the African people and their descendants, as well as to justify their mistreatment of the indigenous American tribes. So racism is always the aggressor. Race-based violence starts and ends with white people. Entirely different is bias. It's possible for a black person to be biased against a white person. It's defensive bias, though, because again, white people started and continued it to present day. So a black person not liking a white person or not trusting a white person on the basis that they're white is not racism. It's defensive bias based on 400 years of dehumanization and history and trauma that has not been atoned for. No reparations have been made. No apologies have been given by the majority of white people. Most white people will tell you, I didn't do it, so I'm not responsible. I've never been racist to a black person. Why do they hate me on the basis of my skin color? That's racist. No, that's smart. Every time black people have tried to create their own communities, white people have come in and ruined it and destroyed it. We've stolen everything they've ever tried to build for themselves. Black creativity and culture is the most plagiarized and least accredited phenomenon in the world. To this day, everyone steals from the black community and their creativity and their artists. It's not TikTok slang, it's AAVE, it's Ebonics. You look stupid. It's not yours. It's not ours, it's theirs. It's not ours, it's theirs.
See, black folks know why they're here. Native peoples know why they're here and how they got here. A lot of Asian folk know, particularly if they're Chinese American, they know they got here because their ancestors were brought over to work on the railroads by the railroad barons who didn't care if thousands of them died laying track 19, 20 hours a day. But for those of us who are from Europe, we have this fiction that we've told, and we believe it, even though there's no truth to it. You know what the fiction is? It's 2 parts. Number one, we say things like, with regard to Mexicans coming over the border, with regard to immigrants coming over, but only that border. That's the only one we care about, right? The southern border. I find that interesting. We're not flipping out about Canada, right? We don't have any of the Minutemen or the anti-immigrant groups sitting off the coast of Nova Scotia with a gun and a scope trying to pick off the sneaky Canadians that are trying to sneak in here for our superior healthcare system, which after all would be a pretty stupid thing to do. But in any event, we only care about that one border, forgetting for a minute that that border was created at the end of a war that was started on false pretense by this country, after which we jacked half of their country. And you weren't taught that in school either, because our history books aren't interested in telling the truth. They tell this very patriotic history that has no relationship to the fact. So that border is artificial. Mexican folk who are coming here, documented or not, let's be clear, are coming home. Their families were here before our families were here in almost every instance. But we forget that, and then we say things like, well, I don't mind them coming. I just want them to come legally like my people did. The hell does that even mean? Come legally? There was no law to break when our people came. The fact that we didn't break a law that didn't even exist, you don't get cookies for that. You don't get a pat on the back and a gold star because your great, great, great whatever was law abiding when there was no law that he could have violated, even if he wanted to. But we've told this lie that we came for these upstanding principles. So we'll say things like, well, our people came for liberty and freedom, democracy. These people are just coming for stuff. They're just coming for jobs. They're just coming for healthcare. They're just coming for stuff. We came for high-minded principle, right? Because we believe that. What kind of third-grade version of American history is that, right? Like when Donald Trump says, well, Mexico's not sending their best. What the hell, you think Europe sent their best? Europe? No, our people were the losers of Europe. I'm not trying to be an asshole. I'm just telling you the truth. Our people were the losers of Europe. The winners didn't get on the boat. You understand what I'm saying? The winners didn't leave. Why the hell would you leave if you were winning? Only the losers left because they had no choice. They were dying. They were starving. They couldn't support their families. A lot of them were convicts who were sold into indentured servitude to work for rich European people. They were barely above the level of a slave themselves. The idea that we had we didn't believe in liberty and freedom. And we know that because once we got to the colonies, we set up the opposite of liberty.
This is actually a really good question. In fourth grade, I moved into a new neighborhood basically, and at the same time, another family was moving into a house, couple houses down and around the corner, and they ended up being my second family. They accepted me even though I was some white kid, right? This black family moved in. I was some white kid with glasses, chubby, kind of nerdy, right? Moved in, and they accepted me into their home, fed me, had me over for sleepovers, loved me just like their own children, right? And I meet my best friend and his two older brothers who are my brothers too. His mom's basically my mom, his aunt's my aunt, his grandma my grandma, right? His cousins are my cousins, right? And there's just there love there. And so I'm so very thankful that I met them. And so ever since fourth grade, I've grew up with them, went to school with them my whole life, and been very close to them. They are my family. And so one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about what I speak about is because when people you love and people you care about go through things on a daily basis and their life is in more danger because they color their skin, it pisses me off. It makes me passionate to do everything I can to change the world.
White people absolutely did invent the concept of racism as we use it today.
No, white people did not invent racism. I'm sorry for the late response to this, you guys. I've been traveling. I'm currently in Turkey.
Yes, white people did invent racism. Sorry for my late response to this, guys. I've been atoning for my sins. But anyways, let's see what Ben has to say.
Yuval claims that white people invented racism, but he gives no data, no historical evidence, or anything to support this. Only rhetorical tricks.
Tricks? I'll be honest, Ben, I didn't really think you'd disagree. I mean, you advertise yourself as a student of history, and I didn't think this was a hotly debated statement. And I figured anybody that didn't take the things that I said at face value would just Google origins of race and find an answer within 5 seconds. But I guess I can do that for us. Origins of race, I'm literally just gonna go in order. And yes, the first one is Wikipedia! A race acquired its modern meaning in the field of physical anthropology through scientific racism starting in the 19th century. This is from the National Museum of African American History and Culture at the Smithsonian. The concept of race as we understand it today evolved alongside the formation of the United States and was deeply connected with the evolution of two other terms, white and slave. The words race, white, and slave were all used by Europeans in the 1500s, and they brought these words with them to North America. But at that time, the words did not have the meanings that they have today. Instead, the needs of the developing American society would transform those words' meanings into new ideas. This is from PBS. Contemporary scholars agree that race was a recent invention. Race and its ideology about human differences arose out of the context of African slavery. Time magazine, I'm facing the origins of race as a concept. Europe also bequeathed Americans with the very category of race. German figureheads, including including Immanuel Kant and J.F. Blumenbach, affirmed the new biometric and anatomical discoveries justified the use of the modernistic word race to distinguish among human subspecies. PubMed, or National Library of Medicine, Race and History, comments from an epistemological point of view. At the beginning of the story, we have the invention of race by European naturalists and anthropologists marked by the publication of the book Systema Naturae in 1735. Yeah, all of this seems to be pretty unequivocal here. I'm not saying that white people are the first people to be prejudiced. We are saying that the concept of race, as we understand it today, a phrase I kept repeating because I figured there'd be some confusion, was created by Europeans during colonialism. And that is why white people invented racism, because racism is discrimination based on race, a category that white people invented. For the rest of the video, Ben gives a bunch of statements that are not responses to any of my arguments, because he just gives examples of things that are not race. For example,
even anti-black racism is not a modern concept at all. You find ancient writings of people discriminating against the burnt-faced people and stuff like that.
So, like I was saying, this is not an example of discrimination based on race, because burnt-faced people or dark-faced people are not a race. Dark-faced person is not the same thing as black person. There are plenty of people with dark faces that are not black, and there are plenty of people who are black that do not have dark faces. That is because race as a social category, yes, is based off of physical characteristics and skin color, but ultimately is not entirely decided by that. The determiners that put you in one racial category or another are by and large entirely arbitrary, and these were determiners that were decided, again, by white people. When we say that white people invented racism, we're not saying that white people are the first people to notice that some people have darker skin than others. We're not even saying that white people are the first people to be prejudiced against people with darker skin. We're saying that white people are the first people to be prejudiced against someone's race, because race as a concept starts with white people.
There's no reason why racism has to be defined within the context of a global system. Many people in the ancient world did not travel around much, so racism was typically much more local.
It is absolutely important to distinguish between a globalized system of racism as opposed to a more local one, because this is ultimately what differentiates racism from tribalism. Racism is not tribalism. It's not a type of tribalism. It just isn't tribalism, because the people within your racial category are not a part of your tribe. I have very little in common with most white people across the planet. We don't necessarily speak the same language. We're not from the same country. We don't have the same shared culture or religion or shared history. We don't even necessarily look alike. The only thing unifying all white people, the only thing we all have in common, is the fact that we all agree that we're white. You probably know that 100 years ago, Jews were not considered white, but today we are. Hooray! Why is that? There is no innate reason for white people 100 years ago to not view Jews as part of the tribe, but for white people today to view them as such. It's not because we look any different. I mean, sure, I don't wear a big hat and have curly sideburns, but I, by and large, am still recognizably Jewish. It's just because 100 years ago, white people did not consider us white, but now they do. And yes, these are decisions that start and end with white people, because white people as a term, as a concept, was something created by white people. The term white race or white people, defined by their light skin among other physical characteristics, entered the major European languages in the later 17th century, when the concept of a unified white achieved greater acceptance in Europe in the context of racialized slavery and social status in the European colonies. So yes, as I was saying, the ideas of a white person, a black person, and race all start with white people in colonization trying to justify the Atlantic slave trade. So yes, because white people created the concept of race, something that has no natural or historic basis, the discrimination against people for falling into one of these groups that white people made up starts with white people.
I got out of the Army in 2007 after a deployment to Iraq. I was a very, very different person back then. And the things that I was doing and saying would absolutely get me fucking canceled today. Now, I have, in a way, had the benefit of making my transformation extraordinarily fucking publicly. In 2008, I testified before the Out of Iraq caucus. It looked like a committee hearing, but it wasn't. It was on C-SPAN, right? And I talked about how I had joined the Army as a New Yorker. In 2003, I signed my contract the year I graduated high school. I was in basic training in 2004. I joined the Army to kill terrorists. And by the time that I made it to testifying before Congress 4 years after I set foot in basic training, I didn't have the lexicon to intelligently describe how I had come to recognize the things that I used to do and say and tolerate. I then in 2008 recognized were racist, right? I said before Congress on C-SPAN, I was a racist. And that's part of what drove me to join the Army. That is a very oversimplified way of saying that I joined the Army to go, get bad guys who were Al-Qaeda, who happened to be brown, who happened to be Muslim, right? I didn't say it in the best way. And that is a video that haunts me still. The Daily Caller wrote about it a few years ago to come after me for being a veteran advocate who was not a fan of Trump during the first Trump presidency. Right. It's something that, current members of the State Department, a conspiracy theorist who now runs communications for the State Department.
What did you just say?
I said that one of the big demographic things that's moving our country right now is that the United States is moving from being a majority white population to a minority white population.
Mm-hmm.
They'll still be the largest minority in the United States. But
and how does that make you feel as white people?
It doesn't bother us at all, but we know that it bothers some white people.
Why do you think it bothers some white people?
There's a fear. There's a fear. They've bought into the idea that white is superior, so that's the white supremacy part. They bought into the narrative, the nonsense that this country was founded on white principles, ignoring the Native American influence and the Latino influence that's always been here, and negating the harm of the black influence that was, brought in by slavery.
Yeah.
And you ignore all of those things. You conveniently create this narrative in your mind that the U.S., the Constitution, the Revolutionary War, all of that was white people.
Mm-hmm.
And negating the immigrant part of it, negating the immigrants that continued to come over. And white is not a culture. It's just the color of the skin that happens to be, for people in the North, because we don't have that evolutionary growth.
But not even that, because white, Irish immigrants and Italian immigrants didn't even used to be considered white.
Right.
So
yes.
it's always
my
been.
Grandparents on my dad's side were either immigrants or born and raised in the Boston area. And Boston, back at the turn of the previous century, the 19th century, the 18th to 19th to 20th, sorry, 19th to 20th century, it was very diverse in Boston, extremely diverse, and not a happy diversity, right?
Yeah.
They were, and most of those cultures, because I will say cultures, were fighting against each other. Yeah. And my grandfather was English, UK, Welsh, and my grandmother was Swedish, and that wasn't really looked at positively at the time.
Yeah, and Grandma Haglund was born in Sweden, right?
Born in Sweden, came over here around 2 or 3 with her
and that's
family.
who you're named after, right?
Yes.
Linnea. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there were segments of each of those cultures that were fighting. I'm sure there were segments that were probably getting along well, but still. And just like now, there are big segments of population that are making this transition with, and there are some that are, who knows what their motivations are. I'm sure it varies person to person to the extent of whatever, but I got to think that there's some type of subconscious, maybe guilt feelings, some worry that what we did to the Native Americans, the black population, is that they're going to do to us, which is, I mean.
Do you have any like short pieces of wisdom or advice that you would say to a white person who you would say is coming from a place of fear or guilt or shame?
Instead of fear, try stepping outside that fear and get to know someone who is not white.
Yeah.
Because, in my family, there's a lot of integration of cultures.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean people married outside of whiteness. And so that exposure, you learn differently. Oh, well, that's interesting, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that we've tried to share that with the children, with all of you children. You're not children, all of our children growing up. Taking them out of the country when we could, right? Let's learn a new language. Let's learn a few vocabulary in this language because we're going to go visit there. You know,
even on the smallest of budgets, you made that.
Right.
Yeah,
we tried.
And another thing is to try to distinguish between, for the people that you're listening to that are stoking your fear, try to distinguish between those people who just haven't worked it out in their heads yet and those people who have an agenda, and the racism is not necessarily what's driving them. There's maybe some greed behind it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
what about your parents? Obviously, they had a different lens, but I also feel pretty lucky that I don't believe they were bigots either. I think they actually did a lot of advocacy work.
My parents or his parents?
Both of your parents.
I was going to say, your parents, your dad was in World War II, and I think being stationed overseas, that he developed a lot of empathy for a lot of different, he was very empathetic.
He was in the South Pacific.
Yeah.
He was part of the time working as a medic's aide in the hospital ship, which meant he was an orderly cleaning up after horrendous things. And then he was in Japan briefly, you know, during the, I don't know what,
and Bonnie's
whatever you call
brothers
it.
too. All three of her brothers.
Right.
You know,
Grandma
that
Bonnie's
changes
brothers.
people
Yeah.
when you are in the midst of and you're fighting together.
Yeah.
Not that that's a good way to learn about other people, but it definitely changed them. And I never encountered bigotry from them. You know, you can kind of hear it in some people. They'll just say something aside. Well, you know, when I was a student at Bradley, people would complain. We had very few African American population, but some students would complain about them in the dorms, saying, you know how they are. They stay up late. And I'm like, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Yeah.
Like maybe they're not
you
welcome.
don't.
Yeah.
Right? Or like you don't. I never knew a student who didn't stay up late. What are you talking about?
Well, and Grandma Bonnie, your mom, also was a teacher. Right?
And going back earlier in her life, they lived very poorly. I mean, Grandpa, her dad was working as a farmer's helper. So
like a migrant farmer, a white migrant farmer. And my mom grew up very poor, very poor.
And she
in the West.
But she met Grandpa.
And she left home at 18 to go be a secretary in New York City, from Washington State to New York City.
How very musical theater.
I mean, she never did really tell that story of what prompted her to go so far, but more power to her. I guess that was the big city that everybody wanted to go to back in the 40s, you know.
Plus,
and then
she had lived on the coast, on the West Coast.
Yeah, might as well try the East
Tacoma
Coast.
and Seattle.
Some curiosity.
Yeah, and a farm, and very poor, and maybe she thought she could make her.
And then she met Grandpa.
They worked in the same company. Yeah, and then her grandmother back in Seattle was sick, and she went back home to take care of her, and my dad followed her. So romantic.
How romantic.
He quit his job. And
That's a Tom Hanks movie right there.
He was pretty romantic to her.
Yes.
Much to our chagrin.
They had 5 kids. So.
And my dad's family, you know, they rented farmland.
Yep.
In a situation that had some aspects of feudalism.
I mean, it's been a struggle for them for as long as we've known them.
But I mean, at the time that he was growing up, that the curve was allowing farmers in that situation to put aside money to, you know, get out of debt and to build
community.
the community, was very interconnected.
We come from
traded work, they traded machinery.
We come from places where you are not alone.
No, I'm not. I'm a straight white male.
This nigga is serious.
What is that? I don't know. What is that? That's open. Oh, it's a goblin. It's nasty.
Free Sudan! Boycott diamonds and gold! Free Sudan! Boycott diamonds and gold! We most definitely cannot forget about the people of Sudan!
Thanks for watching Afro Think Tank. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And follow me on Substack and Patreon for more content. Remember, it's Pan-Africanism or nothing.